Hello, welcome back to my channel, and in this case, blind reviews. Today I will be discussing A Dowry of Blood by T.Gibson. Before we get into the review, consider subscribing to my channel and turning on notifications. That way you're aware when I release videos and you can, you'll be notified. And if you are interested, there is a review review for this on my blog, so you can find it. You can find it in the description. And while you're there, feel free to subscribe to my blog, where you can find some written reviews, or a lot of written reviews, as well as some of my creative writing. So if you want to see what I talk about twice a week, if you want to see in general my creative writing, no, not all my stories are published there. But if you do want to see my creative writing, you can find it in my blog, as well as my book reviews and anything in that. So feel free to check it out in the description. And with that, let's return to regularly scheduled program of A Dowry of Blood by T.Gibson. Okay, so before we begin, I want to start off with some content warnings. I will not be discussing these in the video, but there are some content warnings for A Dowry of Blood that I want to mention before we start reading. So before you read it, just make sure you know that there is implied sexual assault as well as implied abuse. There are some scenes. If I remember correctly, there are some explicit scenes of abuse, some of which are physical, and I think there may be a couple of emotional explicit scenes of emotional abuse, but I can't remember because I read it some time ago, and unlike audiobooks, braille books don't stick the same way. So yeah, just be aware of that when you read it. Also, I originally planned to read some quotes of this book to tell you how I got really interested in it, but I decided not to and just give you a complete review just like that, and just give you like an along the lines kind of thing instead. So that's what things. Also, there's another video where I will be playing with my fidget spinner to try to minimize things. For me, I really enjoy my fidget spinner. It's great. It's helpful. So helpful. And I've been playing with it for an entire afternoon. But here's a description of A Dowry of Blood, which, by the way, is a very short book. T.Gibson's sensational novel is the darkly seductive tale of Dracula's first bride, Constanta. Okay. This is my last love letter to you, though some would call it a confession. I love that line. Saved from the brink of death by a mysterious stranger, Constanta is transformed from a medieval peasant into a bride fit for an undying king. But when Dracula draws a cunning aristocrat and a starving artist into his web of passion and deceit, Constanta realizes that her beloved is capable of terrible things. Finding comfort in the arms of her rival consorts, she begins to unravel their husbands' dark secrets. With the lives of everyone she loves on the line, Constanta will have to choose between her own freedom and her love for her husband. But bonds forged by blood can only be broken by death. A dizzying nightmare of a romance that will leave you aching, angry, and ultimately hopeful. This is apparently by Hannah Witten, New York Times bestselling author of For the Wolf. So, let's see. How do I want to go about discussing this book? I'm actually not sure how I want to discuss this, but okay, here we go. So this is a really really, I guess, interesting book in the way that it is written. I originally what drew I found this book through a review of Unresolved Textual Tension, the podcast. I will link that below, because I think it'll be very useful for you to see the review, and you'll just see why what I find what I found so interesting about it, hopefully. So they have a very in-depth review. I don't plan to go that in-depth. I'm just gonna talk about it briefly, the things I like. Um, Mainly the things I like, and the one thing I dislike, but overall, mostly like. So the prose in this book is amazing. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's a very it's a very it's very poetic and accessible at the same time. I find that that line can sometimes be hard to draw, but this book did it, and I love it. I love it. It's a good draw. So I love the prose. I think the pacing can be very slow. Most of it is slow, but it's fine. I find it's not really that bad. It's good. It builds up the story pretty well. The other thing I want to say about the writing though um is that, well, the one thing that could bother readers in general about this writing is that there is a lot of telling, there's very little showing. And the reason is because it is written in first person perspective or retrospective, first person retrospective, where you're kind of like, this is kind of where people are telling a story. They're basically telling a story back to you in and looking back at the events. They're like looking back at the events. A really good example of this in the little I was able to read is um, Kushiel's Dart by Jacqueline Carey. It has that kind of writing. So it is a story that's being told to you where the character is looking back and telling you what happens in the story, in her story, and it is written and separated into three parts, and it feels like each part is kind of like a novella. I will say that part of my critique comes to the last part. I actually like the novella style that this is written in. I think the fact that these are kind of like short stories um, is kind of interesting. If there are any themes in this book, I don't think I caught them. I think they may have flown over my head. It just read more like someone trying to tell the story. Um, and that's it. But the characters in general were really interesting. I liked Constanta, and I like Magdalena. They're like my two favorites, especially Magdalena. Alexei was Alexi? Alexi was fine. He was just fine. I didn't feel that much for him. One of my favorite parts, speaking of characters, specifically with Constanta, is the fact the very beginning of this story is what caught my attention. Part of it was kind of like, it was kind of like where she's talking about it. She's talking about the beginning, and she talks about how he loved he loved Magdalena for being brilliant and Alexei for this other reason, but he's like, but you loved me because I was your war bride, your faithful Constanta. You enjoyed breaking me and then fixing me up in your work table. And then the other thing that drew my attention is like, I didn't intend to murder you. Not in the beginning. Listen, if my attention had not been drawn by the beginning of I was your war bride, your faithful Constanta, it was going to be drawn by the I originally did not intend to murder you. At least not in the beginning. It was going to be drawn by that. It was going to be drawn by that. And the entire story is told in her perspective, so we're being told what happens. I will say another thing of the writing is that there are a lot of time skips, which could be irritating to some readers. Maybe not all of them, but some readers could be irritated. There's like a bunch of time skips and a lot of telling. So yeah, but the other characters were kind of interesting. But my critique comes in part 3 because everything, the last part feels rushed, and the build up to Constanta under realizing that Dracula can do bad things just feels rushed. It feels like something that was just added because, oh, Dracula needs to die. By the way, I also want to say, before I continue, the one thing I remember that I wanted to say as well is that the uh I it was what was it what was it I was gonna say? Oh, it's polyamorous, by the way. This is a polyamorous relationship, and they're all basically bisexual, which I think is kind of interesting and cool. But the last part does feel rushed, and it feels like it was just added because Dracula needs to die, and that's the interesting thing. Oh, and here's the other thing: throughout the entire story, we don't get his name. We we only know it's Dracula because of the synopsis, but we don't get Dracula's name. One of the things that she says is, "You changed my name, and because I am writing this, you're gonna be whoever I want you to be. I'm going to strip you of your name like you stripped me of mine and my life or whatever." Like, she's like, I'm going to call you whatever I like. And right now you are a ghost. You are this, you're that, right? So she never gives Dracula the I guess the sympathy of having of having his name in this. So you never see his name. He's just referred to him as you, which is kind of like why it reads kind of like a letter. It has a similar writing style. Besides the first person retrospective, it has a similar writing style to You by Caroline Kepnes, where when Joe Goldberg refers to Beck, he just says, not even Beck, it's like he's like, when she went to the store, it's like, you walk into the store. It's like it's saying you, but it's like first person, second person. It's like weird because you get his first person point of view and you get him referring to the person not as she or her but you. So it's a similar writing style to that in that area. So I don't want to say that, but yeah, the last part of the story feels rushed because first of all, unlike for Magdalena, we don't get enough time to kind of get to know her or to, like, we don't get that. We don't get build up to him. We just get him. And then her reason for like deciding, okay, Dracula needs to die, just doesn't feel that believable because she's been with him for centuries. So it feels rushed in that area, and that's one of the reasons that I gave it 4 stars. But overall, it's a good story, and I enjoyed it. If you have read A Dowry of Blood, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you're going to go spoilers, let us all know, please. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the review. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and if you enjoyed my content, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. That way you will be notified when I release videos. Again, there is a blog post linked in the description. I will also be linking the review for Unresolved Textual Tension that Unresolved Textual Tension did on this book as well. It's a lot more in depth than mine, so take a look at that, and we'll all be linked there. And you can also find my review in the description, my written one. So if you want to see that, check it out in the description. And also, while you're there, consider subscribing to my blog, which will contain both a lot of reviews and some of my creative work. So if you want to see what I talk about twice a week, or at least in general, just check out my writing, you can check out my blog. And with that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Until next time, consume stories. Bye.